What up, guys? It's just me. I'm just coming to talk to you a little bit about what I learned on this. Oh, mic is super in the way. Hang on one second. That's much better. What I just learned on a call with lc.org, which is libertycouncil.org. As most of you know, I have been dealing with some stuff with my wife's work, and I'm not going to go down without a fight. I will not. They're mandating a vaccine for a 100% work from home employee. Exemptions are allowed. You can do either religious or ADA exemption. And then there's some ridiculous garbage that goes along with it. So I'm going to go over that and then stuff I just learned. Because I feel this information needs to get disseminated. I don't know what happened. I shared a post with a phone call. It didn't really get much traction. So I felt the need, jump on. We'll do a live. I'll share it. I'll disseminate some of the information I learned that I feel is valuable. And then we'll kind of go from there. Go ahead and likes and share this out. It looks like we're growing. Could use some more likes and shares. But let's get some people in here. And then we're just going to cover some stuff. It's not going to be a super exciting super show, but I just want to provide information. So anybody that might be in the similar situation as my wife is, which is she is mandated to get a vaccine, the COVID vaccine or jab, whatever we want to call it, by a certain date, or she will no longer be employed by that employer. So I want to share this and then also share the resource because I felt it was a good call and I learned a lot. And then there's some positivity to it. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute. But so that's the whole point of this. Quick show just to kind of give us some touch ups, and we're gonna go over some things. So share this out. All right, we're gonna jump into it. So with this call, it's with Liberty Council, lc.org. They had an attorney on. They had their whole crew, to be able to answer questions. You could be able to ask questions. They went over some high-level stuff at the very beginning, which was fantastic. So shout out to them. lc.org, they did a great job in informing you on how you can actually arm yourself with information and how you can take action. So some of the things that I learned in this, and sorry, I got my notebook here, so I'm going to be looking down at it and trying to remind myself some of the stuff that we learned, because it was a lot. I got 3 pages of notes here. First of all, the first big thing that I got from listening to this call is when it comes to religious exemptions. Well, let me back up. Let me explain my wife's situation. And we got the note this week. She has to either provide proof of a vaccine or an exemption by October 29th. And if that is not provided by October 29th, she has until December 15th to officially provide that information. And if it is not received by December 15th, she will no longer be paid or employed by the organization. Well, she will no longer be paid. And then she is given 2 weeks to become compliant. If she doesn't become compliant within those 2 weeks, she is no longer employed by that organization. The exemptions are what's kind of funny. She can apply for an ADA exemption, which is someone that has some medical issue on why they cannot get the vaccine or a shot. Or she can apply for a religious exemption. And the thing is if you're approved for an exemption, you are still required, regardless of your position in the organization, and that's important in here, and I'll touch on that in just a second. Regardless of your position in the organization, you are still required to go and get tested once a week. Now, I understand going and get tested once a week is, if you're working with a bunch of employees, they're trying not to spread it, they're trying to be functional, they're trying to make sure the company is still working. Regardless of your position on COVID, everybody knows where I stand, blah, 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 all of that garbage. But regardless of your position and what you do with the organization, you still have to go get tested once a week. My wife works 100% at home. That chair you see in the corner is where my wife sits next to me while I'm working. She will still be told she has to go in and get tested to sit next to me every day to work. Not go in the office. To work. She has to go and get tested to sit next to me in my office, in our office, to work. Not to go into an office, but to sit next to me where we're around each other all day, every day in the office, at home. We, of course, we sleep in the same bed. We're married. But no, she still needs to get tested once a week. Can anybody make the logic out of this? Weird. And I'm going to touch on some unity stuff at the end, by the way, because some of the stuff that I've learned is pretty enlightening. So that's kind of my situation with my wife and I. I've taken the ownership of the situation to try and learn as much as I can and disseminate to you guys as much as I can to help enable anyone that's in the same situation as us so they can battle this and fight this as much as they can. And I think that's where we need to come from. We need to start unifying in that direction. So on this phone call with lc.org, a big shout out to them again. The call tonight was great, very informational. I put it in my Facebook post earlier. I'll post it again. Again tonight, I'll just reshare it. And lc.org, they share out a lot of information around this and how you can actually arm yourself with information and handle this going forward. That if you are in a similar situation to where you want to fight or just stand up for what is right to choose. Overall, so they went over a lot of things to touch on. Their biggest thing is to be sincere in your religious exemption if that's what you're pursuing. Now, medical exemptions are a little bit easier because you can go get doctor's notes, doctor's letters, those things. So if you have a medical exemption, you can go ahead and hand over that stuff. That's simple, for the most part, at least. I'm sure there might be some exceptions that make it a little bit more difficult. But when it comes to a religious exemption, there's a lot of weird things that come into play. For example, most of you know, I'm here in Utah. The predominant religion here in Utah is Mormon or LDS, Latter-day Saints. They're Christian. They teach Christianity, but they are still pro-vaccine. So it makes it a little difficult. If you are still very Christian and follow the Bible, but not necessarily the Book of Mormon, it kind of ends in some weird treads of water here in Utah, because there's a lot of mutual ground, but then there's some ground that doesn't meet, and it's a little weird here. And so you got to make sure that you understand what religious belief that you are standing on, where your religious beliefs are coming from. Mine and my wife's are going to be just Christianity in general, not necessarily LDS or Mormon, because there's some concerns I have in that, even though it's not necessarily all bad. But I believe in a lot of just what God has said and what is in the Bible. And that's the book I predominantly read, and it's the book I really just pay attention to, I should say. Because Book of Mormon I still understand and I've read it, but it's not my forte or my main book, I should say. However, so the main concern when it comes to religious beliefs is being sincere, because most likely in these scenarios, by what I was hearing in this call and a bunch of the questions and answers that were happening, you might get questioned and you might get called in to come and face someone in person. And so you will have to talk to them and you will have to explain to them your religious beliefs. So it's not just as easy as putting in a couple Bible verses and this and that in a form or in a document and emailing it to someone. It could be with some places, But a lot of people said it was like an interrogation. They were really thrown off because they were asked weird questions. Like, for example, hang on, let me find it. Where was that? Um, oh, have you ever had any other concerns with any other vaccines before? Well, what does that have to do with this vaccine? No, I have a concern with this vaccine, and and these are my beliefs around this vaccine. Blah 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 blah. That stuff. Like, there's weird interrogation questions that are happening. So you need to make sure you're prepared to be able to answer those questions and to be sincere on your religious beliefs. Definitely do not lie. Like, that's definitely not what God would want, and that is not what we need to do. Now, religious beliefs are very strong in that. And with this call, it was very interesting. One of the things I'm really bummed I missed out on the second half of this statement. He said, Spirit of the Lord is liberty. And I 100% believe in that. Spirit of the Lord is liberty. And that gives us the freedom of choice when you say the term liberty. Like, and God will give us the proper guidance to make sure that we are making the right decisions and we are going down the right path. And we need to look at him and the Holy Ghost so we can make the proper decisions. And those are the things that is interesting that I heard on this call that I'm like, great. Why aren't we not talking about this? Why are other people not hearing this? We just keep hearing, get a religious exemption. Here's a letter. Cool. I literally have 4 Christian letters for religious exemptions that I'm not comfortable with just sending off because maybe I interpreted a verse a little bit different than the way they did, right? And that, you can't do that. You got to make sure that it is sincere and you are following and you are acting upon the word of God and the Holy Ghost as a guidance. The other thing that I found that was interesting is a lot of people were talking that they were actually being terminated because their religious beliefs were being denied. And I think a little bit of that comes from them not actually, they are just trying to apply for religious beliefs, but not actually understanding what it takes to apply and say what your religious beliefs are when you are applying for a religious exemption, which comes back to the same as being sincere. You need to be sincere in those things. Um, there is someone that also asked a question, which I'm bummed I didn't get to ask my question, which is about my wife, that she's 100% work from home. And why weekly testing? There's a guy that works in a construction site, and he said he got his exemption approved, but he has to go through and do testing every 3 days. And that testing every 3 days has to be documented and turned in, all because he works on a construction site and with other people. And he's outdoors. he's, a, he's a construction worker building houses. But no, he still needs to go get tested every 3 days. Weird. Like, and one of the trends I noticed, and we didn't in the calls and a lot of Q&A that was asked, they they were all predominantly like those weird things were predominantly in blue states. And I'm not making this a red and blue situation by any means. So predominantly I saw a lot of Oregon, I saw Rhode Island, I saw Wisconsin, I saw um, California. We actually had Washington listed. We had some government employees in some of those states. And it gets interesting. And I'm like, okay, there's a trend. I'm going to join a few more calls. Like, there's other calls that are going to be coming up. They do them all the time. I'm going to post the schedule. So everybody else, if you guys want to join, I'm going to, after this, I'll go ahead and post a schedule with the call in number. And if you guys want to call in and listen, I would encourage you to do so. At lc.org, huge shout out again. Fantastic job in informing people, especially having the attorney on the phone to be able to answer and give you proper guidance. Even he took down a phone number of someone because he felt that they were wrongfully terminated. And he said, I will follow up with you tomorrow. And so this organization, I feel is very genuine. And he speaks more from a Christian value. So if you are from another religion, it might not be 100% just switch over to where you understand and it will match. But this is stuff that we need to be regurgitating and sharing out with people and making sure they understand how this goes about. Um, the Another thing that I thought was interesting when it came to it is some of the religious exemption forms that were digital were even limited on how many characters or words you could type. I can tell you my wife's work. I cannot attach an extra document to the form. I don't know if there's a limitation on characters or words, but I cannot provide another document. For example, um, if I wanted to reference law saying religious beliefs and wrongful termination or anything like that, I cannot do that. They force me to put it in text, like put it in text boxes and explain it, which is going to be weird because it, who wants to type out that stuff? Who wants to type out legalese? None of us. Like we don't do that. But there is limitations with some forms that are digital, and that's not right. That's not fair. Because how are you fair? And I'm throwing out just a random number. How is it fair to say you need to prove your religious exemption in 2,000 characters? Like that just shows that they're not actually caring about the system. And there's a lot of concerns there when it comes to the digital forms. So keep that in mind. The other things that I was looking at that I have notes of, you flip to the other page. He was, oh, this was a big one that I have a note of. Is apparently this one is in Washington at the VA office. He applied for a religious exemption. They did not deny his religious exemption. They offered a reassignment to a different job. So they are technically not denying his religious beliefs. They are offering to move him to another position that is more applicable, that doesn't put other employees at risk. Which who knows what that means? That's super frustrating. That you do a job, and who knows, like take this with a grain of salt in some regard with some of these people, like they might let's be honest, there's always some bad employees that are not perfect, right? They don't show up to work on time every day. There's all of those things, but there is these situations that employers might do that would end up telling you, "Oh yeah, we're not firing you or forcing you to leave our organization. We're just saying if you don't get a vaccine, you can't do this job. You got to go somewhere else. We got to move you over here." And who knows what comes with that? That could be a demotion. That could be limiting your impact of growth within that organization, all because you do not believe from a religious standpoint that with the vaccine, that you didn't you felt that you should not take that. And a lot of the attorney and the feelings from lc.org was emphasizing your communications and your relationship with God is where your decisions are coming from, not anything else. You prayed about it and you prayed about it, and God was telling you this is where you need to go. And 100% that is where being sincere about your religious beliefs and how those things go should be done. Now, the part that's also interesting about when it comes to these companies and what they're trying to do is there's a lot of scare tactics. Um, there are some things that I find that's super frustrating. For example, what I'm going through, there is an announcement of a mandate, and at my wife's organization, and they said, "Yeah, here's the mandate. This is going to happen. Blah blah blah. You're going to have to get this." Didn't say a word. Did not say a word about an exemption. Did not. Well, they said exemptions are going to come out later when someone asked, but they did not just openly offer the information. They're like, mandate. Yeah, you're going to have to get the vaccine if you work here. But then when someone asks, like, hey, like, is there exemptions or what? Like, what if I don't want it? So they're kind of doing a scare or a fear tactic to encourage you to do it. Now, all in all, is this show to say don't do it? No. If you feel the vaccine is for you, go get it. Right? Cool. I'm not telling you no. I'm sharing my experience. I'm also sharing my experience from the phone call and advice and other people's experiences that I'm just regurgitating. It's nothing bad. If you want to go get it, no problem. That's where freedom of choice comes in. That's the freedom we have in our country. And if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you want to go ahead and take it, take it. I'm in support of you. Good, cool. I hope you're just as much of a support of me of not wanting to do it. That's all I ask. Um, and Angie, I'm sorry. I see a lot of comments in here, guys. I'm just kind of going off at the moment. But Angie, if your husband has to take it by November 22nd, I encourage you. lc.org. Also come. I will get the information posted on my Facebook page. Listen to that call. See if it can give you guys some guidance that can help you. There could be something in there. So please look into that if you don't want to. Just do that. If you're okay with taking it, cool. I support you guys. That's fine. One of the other questions that was asked is I got the first one out of the two. I got the first one. I don't know about the second one if I want it or if it's mandated with my employer. And if a booster shot comes up, if that gets mandated, my wife was super sick with the first one. We really don't want to get the second one. It doesn't seem like it's working. Doesn't seem like it's for us. And after researching it from a religious standpoint, it seems it doesn't work. It's not for me, and morally, I should not be obligated to take it. How do I approach that with my employer? Which is a very tough thing to do because you're already halfway committed, right? And so the attorney responded and was like, "Hey, like, I get it, and you got to respond to it, especially from a religious standpoint. If that's your approach with religious exemptions, be like, God is a man of forgiveness. You can make mistakes. God will understand, and that's the whole purpose of repentance. And that's where, yeah, things can be forgiven. And you just felt in your communication, your faith with God, and in your prayer, you shouldn't continue with it any further. You made your mistake, and you have communicated with Him, and you feel this is your guidance going forward. Now, that was strong to me because honestly, that is the big emphasis in all of this is if it is a religious belief, it should be between you and God on how you make those decisions. And God should be, and the Holy Ghost should be guiding you to be able to make those decisions properly and how you actually handle that going forward. The other notes, let's see. Those are the different questions that were asked and answers that came about. When it comes to my notes, one of the big things I found in here that he emphasized, he said, do not go to the internet and Google a standard letter of a religious exemption and provide that. If you can Google it, your employer can Google it. And so if they just find that standard letter, they're going to call you in, probably drill you with questions and call you on your bluff. This is where the sincerity comes from. You need to be sincere about your relationship with your religion and your God. Now, and honestly, this is sometimes just a calling. When it comes to, you guys have heard me say this a few times before, that I'm on a new path to get back into that relationship with God. It's been ever since I met Cash. And so I've been redoing that myself. And so I'm not perfect either. And right now I'm rebuilding that relationship. And it can be tough, but I this might be a reason for that. not saying it is. That's your decision. But ultimately, this is pushing me more that direction. And I wanted to disseminate as much of this information that I can to make sure as many people can be as prepared as they can and make sure that we are doing the right thing that is for you or for me or for anyone, that they have information and it's not being withheld. The other thing is, don't copy and paste just verses and just be like, this verse says this and this verse says this. Be genuine in your responses and elaborate. Like, don't just give a couple sentences explaining this verse means exactly this, because we all know sometimes when we read our books, they can be interpreted a little bit different. And also, there are different copies of different books, especially the Bible. There's different versions based upon where you're at with Christianity. So be careful with that, but make sure you're prepared if you ever get called in to answer questions, to be sincere and understand where you're at in your position with your religious beliefs and why the vaccine is not good. Now, a couple things to squash. Some of you have already heard it from me because I've done it in the comments. HIPAA violations. No, the attorney confirmed, and I work in the industry of HIPAA, and I'm trained in it, and that's what my work does. HIPAA violations is garbage. It's just being spewed all over the internet. Getting tested or forced to get tested by your employer is not a HIPAA violation. Period. End of story. Nothing. The attorney even confirmed it for me. Thank you. I'm coming out and saying it again. It is not a HIPAA violation. They are not spreading your medical history or anything like that. They are asking you to test and just give a positive or negative to your employer. They are not asking for medical history or spreading your medical information or personal information on the internet or with anyone else. So that's what makes it not a HIPAA violation. Second thing, sorry, let me flip my page again. My ceiling fan is flipping everything over. Where did that go? There's one more thing that I wanted to address that was lawful stuff. Lawful stuff. Dang it. Where is that note? Yeah, right there, Q12. One of the other questions, when it comes to if you get called in to come and answer some questions about your position or your religious beliefs or anything along those lines, do you need to have attorney representation? And the attorney was like, if you can and it's available, why not? Not a big deal, but it's not necessary. Sometimes it can be a little bit different and difficult, and it could show a wrong impression. However, his more position on it is coming back to the sincerity situation, the sincerity position with being in your religious position. When it comes to being filing for a religious exemption, it should be sincere to where you can actually speak to exactly why you are applying for that religious exemption. And there should be no reason for legal representation. And they may have it on their side. There are some people that he's said that is referenced, and there is some courts already, well, some lawsuits already filed in Washington, D.C. over it that he knows of and is involved in. He couldn't go on any further around it, around having legal representation to make sure things are actually done properly. But it's generally not needed. Even if they bring in attorneys, it's more of an intimidation factor, is the way it was explained. Just make sure, again, you're being sincere with your religious beliefs and your position on why this vaccine is not good for you, or it is not within your religious beliefs that you should be taking it. And so a lot of those things are why I wanted to do this call, and I wanted to not call, I had the call, and I listened to it, and it was super informative. I'll post again tomorrow. It's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, is the next one. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my kids outside. They're outside running around in the dark. But 1 p.m. Eastern is another call tomorrow. I encourage anybody to call in and listen to it. Even if you don't have to worry about this problem, it's super informative to learn how our systems work and what rights we have. And as I promised at the beginning of this and a couple times during our show, where is the unity coming from? Like, how does this all tie back to unity in us as a country? This is interesting because a lot of my concerns with my current situation that I'm preparing for, we're not actually engaged in anything yet, because I'm making sure I have all my ducks in a row and I have everything ready, but I'm preparing for it, is I'm noticing everything is done behind the scenes. Like, oh, we're going to send every email. And Sherry, that is correct. You cannot use Mormon religious beliefs because unfortunately the prophet and the quorum is asking everybody to get vaccinated. And that is where I do appreciate that religion. I really do. They taught me a lot. But I am converting more to strict Christianity and following my King James Bible is where I'm at. But it is tough, and I do understand that. And Sherry, feel free to PM message me if you need to talk more or need any more advice there, we can talk. But more about the unity part, and then we'll wrap this all up real quick. And we'll probably have a couple more of these shows as I have more of these calls because as you can tell, I feel engaged and excited for the information that I learned, and I'm trying to regurgitate so everybody's prepared. But when it comes to the unity, like the situation I'm in, that they came out and said, vaccine mandate, you will have to get it. You work here, you will have to get it, no ifs, ands, or buts. Oh, exemptions, don't worry about that. We'll send out a letter in 2 weeks, and we'll let you guys know what those are. But not right now. We're not going to tell you right now. Right now, we're telling you, go get the vaccine. What? So you didn't get all your ducks in a row. You didn't make sure you had everything ready. You weren't prepared to answer questions. You just said, you came out on a stage and you came out and told everybody, go get your vaccine, and left it at that. And now, all of a sudden, this week, we have received the notification, and it is saying that, yeah, you will have to get the vaccine. You will have to provide your proof of either the vaccination or provide your exemption for ADA or religious in the month of October. It will be reviewed, and in the month of December is the final deadline. And by December 15th, if that is not mentioned, if you do not have anything turned in, you will no longer be working and you will be put on unpaid leave. You will be given 2 weeks to be able to become compliant. And if you don't become compliant within those 2 weeks, you are no longer an employee of this organization. The part with the exemptions they fail to tell you is just that, oh, you need to be tested every week. Oh, and you need to jump through all of these other hoops. There's other hoops that you have to jump through, not just the testing. And they're trying to just make it as painful and as frustrating to where you just obey. And that is where we need to stand up and fight. If you believe in that, if you believe that not everyone should get the vaccine, regardless if you have got it or won't get it, if you believe that not everyone should get it, everyone should unite. People should just tear up their vaccine cards and be like, I lost it, but I did get the vaccine. Just because you are helping other people that are just like, no, I'm protecting freedoms of the Americans, and that's what everyone is given. And the reason why they did this weird thing about this exemptions, and it wasn't sent out to everyone, it was only sent out to the people they did not have record of receiving the vaccine. It was only sent to the people that they didn't have record of. So they're trying to segment and separate people and keep that divide going, and then also not bring it up to where people could unify and come together and be like, no, we are standing together. We are not in support of this. They tried to hide it and keep it from people to where you can't actually go and talk to your coworker and it's well known because it's not out in the open. It's hidden because they sent everybody an email that doesn't have anything on record. The people that did get the vaccine got nothing. So they're trying to still force that wedge. And that's not right. I don't care where you stand on this COVID stuff and with the vaccine. I don't care. If you support it, cool. If you don't, cool. That's fine. But sending it only to certain people keeps driving a wedge to divide individuals and keep a fight that is ridiculous that we should not be doing. We should be fighting united and keeping this together to enable everybody to make the freedom, to have the freedom of choice. And that is not happening right now. Organizations are forcing people to go separate ways, and we still gotta fight that. Russo said it last week or earlier this week. It's all a blur to me right now. Fight to unite. I know we're all about uniting to fight, but we're having to start to fight to unite at this point because they're forcing this wedge and trying to say, whisper over here to the left and whisper over here to the right, or non-vaxxers versus vaxxers, and trying to keep everybody against each other. We can't be doing that. And we need to come together and fight for it in a unified fashion. And that's what I wanted to bring together and share with everyone from the unity perspective. And what I'm seeing is still being forced. And just so everybody knows, the organization I'm going against is probably one of the biggest organizations in Utah. And it's been around for a very long time. And I'm not looking forward to it. But I'm not going to give up. I will not. And so if any of you need help with this stuff, lc.org, Liberty Council is who it is. PM me, direct message me, send it to Be the Change page. I have access to those messages too. I check them all the time. Let me know. I can try to help provide some insight, give you some links. I have some other links to other pages that are trying to help people in these situations. lc.org also gives some examples of religious beliefs. They also give you some examples on how to respond to denials. They also give you examples on how to handle other situations around this vaccine, which is great. I know I'm giving them a whole lot of free publicity, but I was really moved by this call and I thought it was great. So I wanted to regurgitate and share that with everyone. Feel free to reach out to me. And I live in California, over 100 employees. Kayla, this is an important thing. Everybody, the 100 employees, guys, we gotta, that's all talk right now. I have yet to have anyone I have not found it. No one has really found the executive order that says any employer over 100 employees has a mandated vaccine from Joe Biden. I have not found that executive order yet. Again, talking about scare tactics. And this is where I'm saying, like, we got to be uniting and coming together and communicating and working together around this. I cannot find the executive order. I could be wrong. I will 100% admit I could be wrong. If I'm wrong and someone knows where it is, please send it to me because I want to read it word for word. I do not believe this executive order of employers with over 100 employees has to mandate a vaccine. I do not believe this executive order exists right now. It's all talk. So if anybody finds it, please correct me. Please send it to me. Like, I don't care about being corrected. If I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. But that's my, well, in SUNY's words, that's my TED Talk. I'm not really good at TED Talks, but I wanted to regurgitate and share some of the information I learned tonight. I'm going to do it again I'm going to join the call again tomorrow. I'm going to join the next ones. I'm going to post a schedule. But if there is anything else, please let me know. I'll try to help give as much guidance as I possibly can. Gina said, it's under my understanding that OSHA can be used to the capacity Biden wants to use them either. That's possible. And so that is very, very possible. However, there are ways that there still are rules and guidance that OSHA has to follow. So there might be some things that need to look into there, and I'm going to do some digging because it's not like they can just make up their own rules. There's an approval process. You can't change things overnight. Um, they might be able. There might have to be approval processes for that. Um, but anyways, I just wanted to come on and share this information. Oh, and I see it. You cannot be used to that capacity, and yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But we'll see. We'll look into that. I will look into that personally. Anyways, have a great night. It's Thursday. Football's on. I'm going to go turn that on. I know a lot of people are boycotting it, but I still enjoy watching it. Have a great night. Love you guys, and we'll talk to you guys later.